everyone, and welcome back to Let's Take 5, the podcast where we pick a cinema legend and take 5 of their films to highlight their excellence and range. My name is Austin Luger.
My name's Eric Martindale.
And we're on week 3 of our Richard Linklater 5. Previously, we have talked about Slacker and Dazed and Confused. Coming up is School of Rock and Boyhood, but today we're talking about one of my all-time favorite films, Before Sunrise. And we have 2 very special guests with us today. We have the director and co-writers of a film that I really loved from the Heartland Film Festivals where I first saw it. It's the film Hank and Asha, and we have James E. Duff and Julia Morrison here. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having us. We're happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I thought of you guys first thing because I love your movie so much. You have this wonderfully romantic tale about 2 documentarians who send video messages from Prague to New York, and they start a kind of budding romance over their love of kind of cinema and their interest in each other. And it always very happily reminded me of this movie. So I want to know, were you guys inspired by Before Sunrise, I assume?
You know, actually, believe it or not, we really weren't. I know there are a lot of similarities, but when we conceived of the idea, it was more like an epistolary novel idea with the communication with actual letters. And we were living overseas at the time and talked about in the past we used to write letters, believe it or not, people did that, and kind of what they meant and how they established relationships. And we thought that'd be a cool idea for a movie, but to update it, and make film messages rather than written messages. And a friend of ours wooed his now wife doing video messages. We watched them. They were fantastic, and put us right in the middle of the relationship because he was addressing us as the viewer, and we felt like he was addressing us as a relationship. And so we watched it grow, and we wanted just to create a movie that dealt with a relationship from the inside out. So, I probably as we went on, I was like, oh yeah, Before Sunrise, but definitely at first we were trying to think of something a little bit different.
There are definitely a lot of thematic similarities,
yeah.
Which I'm sure we will get into shortly, but sort of central to both our film and Before Sunrise, for me anyway, is this sort of question of, if there's this special person out there, what will you do to make sure they don't slip away, And so in that way, there's definitely sort of a simpatico thing going on with our film and Before Sunrise.
And that it centers around 2 characters for the entire movie. So, yeah.
And there's something that's said at the very beginning of Hank and Asha that made me think even more about Before Sunrise. Because when Before Sunrise came out, no one thought that there would be a sequel. It was just kind of one story. And if you haven't seen Before Sunrise, it is the story of Ethan Hawke, who plays Jesse, and Julie Delpy, who plays Celine, who is an American and a French woman who are on a train together, and on a whim, they decide to get off in Venice and spend the night together as they talk about life, love, and everything. And
Vienna.
Something so...
Vienna, not Venice.
Vienna.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Someone in podcast land just went, wait, what did he just say?
I know. But something that's said in Hank and Asha is recognizing that it might be temporary, but there's kind of beauty in that moment as well. What do we all think about it? Because there are sequels to Before Sunrise, but if this was just the one day together, is this a perfect day?
Yeah, I was gonna kind of start on that too, about it being the perfect day. You know what struck me about this movie, and this was my first time seeing the movie, so I went in pretty fresh here. And unlike you, I thought it was an interesting perspective, kind of like with Dazed and Confused. And when I first saw the movie, I was actually older than the characters in it, so I was able to watch this movie and sort of reflect on the. And I'm quoting some movie here. I don't remember what it is, but sort of the moronic beauty of youth. Both the characters seem to have, and how that sort of and how that sort of plays with my expectations and the sort of things I would have said. And the dialogue is so honest in a way that I found myself feeling like, oh yeah, I would have. That's kind of like what I might have said. Or it's just always wonderful to watch characters sort of play at romance, to sort of kind of find it in the dark. And I forget your original question, so I'm just going nuts. I'm just going nuts right now. But it is something like when I was watching it, how it just seemed I was just taken by how natural the conversation seemed without ever going into fluff, and how much the movie sort of had the characters rely on faith in a way that I don't think older people would have done.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
What do you mean by faith?
We're still moronic meetings.
Yes, exactly.
There's so much about the sort of nature of the conversation that basically, the whole film is this one long conversation that reminds me so much of the kind of conversations that you have in your dorm room late at night in college,
Exactly.
And the sort of it just keeps on going, and you go from one subject to the next kind of seamlessly, and you go deep, and then you go funny, and you get earnest, but then you give each other shit. Yeah, exactly. And that sort of constantly vacillating dynamic of those kinds of conversations feels very true to me.
And I think that the tone was set brilliantly at the beginning when they're on the train. And they're talking, and he brings up the reality TV show, that really awful idea.
Yeah, no, terrible. It's a really bad idea for a television show.
It's a really bad idea. But she's honest. A lot of people are like, oh, good idea. But she's like, that is really boring. What are you doing? And so right away, we're privy to their honesty, and we're going to go along with them because we realize, okay, they're going to be honest with each other. And I think that was a huge tone setter that I didn't really realize until we watched it, a few days ago. I was like, oh, that was really intentional, and it really set the tone for what was to come. And I think without that, it might not have been as believable, maybe.
And when you remember the film, you sort of think back to the night that they spend wandering around Vienna, but the first 15 minutes of the movie are on the train.
Right, which I forgot was that long.
And it's and that's where the filmmakers have to really sell you on their chemistry, because they're going to make this really ballsy decision to get off the train together. And if you don't believe that they've really cemented that chemistry at the beginning,
you're not going to buy it.
It's not going to work, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because you have to, as an audience member, buy into the fact that there's something there, that literally these characters have potential to stay literally with each other forever, or her getting off the train comes off as weird, and he comes off as pretty creepy for even asking, right?
And it's also one of those things, sometimes when you meet somebody for the first time, you tell them things that you never tell your best friend.
Yep.
You know how that is?
And on trains.
Trains are, honestly, we've done research about, we were going to do a train project, that it is a conduit to honest conversations for whatever reason. And this took me back to that time. I was like, oh God, when I was in college, I was overseas, and oh my God, I told these people things that I never told my best friend or my family or anything. And that's kind of why I think we like watching it too, is because we can relate to that, and we also believe it, because it's like they go deep, but yet, that's what really does happen.
I was watching one of the bonus features this week about Before Sunrise, and it was Richard Linklater and the two actors kind of talking about now decades of working with these characters.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the first film and kind of how important it was for the actors to contribute to their characters. They're not credited as screenwriters in this film, but they are in the sequels. But it was Julie Delpy who was saying, in the original script, she never bought why Celine would get off the train. And she actually helped kind of rework that scene. So
that's interesting.
So it's believable that this woman would just follow this random American dude off a train.
Right.
Well, they totally sell it.
They totally.
They do, and I know I feel like we're harping on this a little bit, but I thought it was interesting. Something you both mentioned is about how honest they can be with each other because it's a clean slate. You know, they don't have any real expectations about each other. So and it's sort of
freeing.
Interesting. It is. It's really freeing. And I think at first, and I think that this is done really well, this is a really neat part in the film. So they meet each other on the train, and you can you see the chemistry there, and it's pretty electric. And then they get off the train, they decide to start to take a stroll down Vienna. And for the first time ever, the pressure is on them. It was no pressure before, and now they're alone together walking Vienna, and the pressure's on, and they can't think of what to talk about.
I love that.
And I thought that was, I feel like, again, adding to how honest the film is and how true it is, and these conversations that I found myself in, that I've had in my life at this point, wow, did that strike a few chords. Like, wow, I've been there before.
Yeah. And they distilled it because they run into those two guys doing the play. that cow or the ant.
Those guys are great.
So weird.
It's so weird, and so it immediately kind of dispels the awkwardness because they couldn't be any weirder than these two guys.
That was kind of their one regret for the day, right? They didn't go see that play.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great bookend.
In the morning. They think about that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It was like Chekhov's gun. I mean, it was like, where's the play, man? I need to see the play.
It's gotta, and of course you expect it to. You expected them to show up, and like, oh, they didn't. Okay.
Yeah,
All of the characters, starting with those two guys, all of the characters that they encounter over the course of the film are all right on the edge. They're very quirky and they're almost silly,
Yeah.
but they're just sort of right on this edge in this way that also that feels sort of true to me about when you're traveling. Like everyone you meet feels like an adventure, feels like a character, and it's heightened because you're traveling. And anyway, all of the characters, down to the guy writing the poem on the bank of the river. I love that guy.
I love that guy too. And it's interesting when I first saw the guy, I remember like my first take on it was, is this guy kind of dangerous? That was my first take on the guy. But again, because and you get a fortune teller, you have the two guys we were talking about earlier, and all the people that you kind of meet on the stage playing music, and you're right, each character is heightened the way they seem to always be in your memory when you think back about that stuff.
It's like your journal, make it right out of your journal.
Yeah, it makes it even more magical, I feel like, on top of everything. So
it was so weird for me. I don't know what viewing this was for me to watch this movie, but it was during that maybe early middle sequence. It was right after the fortune teller. It was with the poet. Did I actually feel this weird sense of like danger about the thing? I know I've seen it a million times, seen the sequels. I know what's going to happen, but the Ethan Hawke's Jessie character is a bit too cynical for her during this time, and I kept realizing how fragile this whole day is. This whole thing could fall apart so easily. And if he keeps being a dick a little bit too long, it doesn't work anymore.
That's really interesting that you saw it that way, because what I found myself thinking about was the fact that the movie the very first thing that happens in the movie is this German couple is fighting on the train, right? So they're like, they sort of have this initial bond in relationship to this couple fighting, right? Sort of setting up how like tenuous this all is. And every time they have a little bit of a disagreement in the film, like about the fortune teller, they recover. And it's that sort of ability to recover from a disagreement that I feel like is such a great like sign of the potential of a relationship, right? That you don't go down the rabbit hole, that you sort of bounce back. And so every time they sort of like get into a bit of a disagreement and then they're like, oh, but whatever.
Yeah, and that
it's like that.
Yeah,
you're right. I feel like the ebbs and flows in the conversation. That's sort of those. Well, this is synonymous with what I just said, but those peaks and valleys that they do have. It's that sort of the way that sort of messes with the cadence, I think, is necessary in a film that's going to just be a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And the way they recover and the way they dig themselves out of it and come back, like they both want to, even when they're no matter where they are in the argument, like they both want this to work, right? And it's always interesting. I always love that, watching how they disagreed, and I found that to be some of the most fascinating dialogue, and how they sort of let it go and how they might bring it back up again later. Like,
I always kind of believed that the strength of the writing of characters is how they bounce off other characters, because like the way these two, when they fight, it's very true to the character that we've seen from them for the past like 45 minutes or so, and it doesn't go into like a very like boring dreamer cynic kind of thing. This is just Jesse and Celine. These two very three-dimensional characters who are approaching these topics from their own thing, and to watch that work so well, and I guess the recovery from it also just feels unique to them. It doesn't feel like there's no screenwriting cheats in this movie. Ever.
Yeah.
Right. And so often in your sort of typical romantic comedy, the way a story like this would be structured is like some point towards the middle of the movie, everything's hunky-dory and grand, and they're having this great, fireworks, this great connection. And then about, 3/4 of the way through the movie, they have to like hit total rock bottom and break up or whatever. to then get together at the end for the happy ever after. And this movie is so not that, and it's so just this sort of the regular ups and downs of a relationship.
It's the pleasure of watching two people together.
Yeah.
And that are kind of, because you have that feeling you're falling for each other, and it's super intense, and
it's mostly great.
It's mostly great, and it's not that. It's mostly great, and I think as a viewer, you just enjoy watching that, being part of that world.
I agree 100%. I kept waiting for. Like, the movie continues subverting expectations by just not playing by the rules you expect them to play by. And part of that is changed by, I've never been to Vienna, because this is a movie as much about a conversation as about setting. So like seeing the different vignettes of the different people, but a lot of the conflict that you sort of feel, and the obstacles these characters have to overcome is checking off which goal they reach to get even closer to each other. For instance, the first kiss. You're waiting for that. You want that, and the movie like tenderizes that moment before it finally serves it up to you.
What's cool about that is at the beginning, if you notice, like, he's really working it. They get off the train, his arms around her, totally working it, and she's kind of not having it. And then when he finally kind of backs off and kind of chills out about it, and that's kind of where the nice moment happens. And she kind of almost, do you say you want to kiss me? She almost kind of initiates. Well, kind of. She
helps him out.
She helps him out. But it definitely, it helped to have him try it first and kind of then chill out. Because that's what a guy does.
Right. There's this long scene on a tram where he's like
the first scene,
coming on pretty strong. It's a little creepy.
Yeah, he's got the arm. Yeah, that's right. He's got the arm around her and everything. Again, I feel like that may be the expectations kind of messing with him a little bit, right? Because we see that he isn't creepy. He just, I don't know if. He couldn't have expected to have a girl follow him off the train. He couldn't have expected to have been having that conversation right now. And then as the more you start to try to enjoy each other, at some point, it is just going to be one night, too. So you have that pressure, too, in the back. And it's wonderful watching the characters both navigate that as through the dialogues and who they are, and as it pertains to their gender roles. And it's just a really fascinating thing to sort of sit back and observe. I mean...
Also, like, it's no coincidence it's at night, because you do tend to have these conversations at night.
That's a great point, yeah.
It wouldn't happen during the day. And, maybe, but probably not to the extent where you do feel more open at night. And it's very much that age. I stay up all night all the time talking to people and, having philosophical conversations. But it's very much about the night, I think, too.
And there's a brilliance with the way the story is done, because it's almost as if the characters know the title of the film. Because they know there's this Cinderella element to it all, because...
Well, there's a clock ticking the whole time.
And they they talk about it to each other. It's not like a surprise at the end that they have to go home. And I love that really kind of more somberly mature scene where they kind of talk about, like, how to say goodbye to each other.
Right.
And how unsatisfying that was for them.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's sort of funny. They kind of articulate all of the sort of dramatic choices that they have to make in the movie. Like, are they going to kiss? Are they going to sleep together? Are they going to stay in touch?
Right.
What's it going to be like to say goodbye? All of these things.
Right.
Because of the nature of this film, it allows them to actually say those questions.
And it works.
And it works because, again, we know they're being honest with each other.
Yes,
if they're holding that stuff back, then they're just lying. And they haven't shown that they do that with each other, or they're lying by omission. And I think part of how, and watching how they overcome these obstacles, is pretending like they are just going to see each other one night. Like, at some point, they face facts. Well, this is the last night. Okay, so we're just going to say we're never going to see each other again, right? And that's going to make everything better. Like,
right.
And then, wow, that's really kind of heartbreaking, and I know it's killing me, and I know it's killing you, and this is the last moment I may ever see in my life, and I can't help myself. I have to articulate that.
And I love how they don't acknowledge that they've both been faking the answer to that question. I love how they don't reveal until the very, very, very last second that they're on the train platform that they have actually been sort of faking their answer to that question the whole time, that they've been convinced, you know, they sort of said what they both thought the other person needed to hear in that moment.
Cool, right.
You know, it's just tonight, we'll never see each other. I'm cool with that. Yeah, I'm cool with that. And then it's only at the very last second
that
it's kind of the
only time.
Not
Sorry
really
to cut you off there, Julie. I didn't mean to do that. It's, but it was just because I'm so passionate about that part. It's incredible because they are literally now confessing the only lie that they've been. The only thing they've been the only lie told each other the entire film, and they both have to get it out. And I'm sure it's extraordinarily freeing, one, but I think part of it comes from this desire to say that, like, okay, if I say I never saw you again, or if I said I was never going to see you again, and I actually agreed to that, that almost feels like I'm cheating myself of telling you I just had one of the greatest nights of my life. Mm-hmm. Like, and I need to share that with you, and I need to know that you feel that way too. Like, and
there's something special about the setting, because to say goodbye on a train station it's old Hollywood, right? It is. It's someone coming back, but often in those scenes it's someone planning to return, right? It's someone kind of going away for going to war or to come back, hoping to come back. Mm-hmm. But this one, if they don't get this information out in the next 45 seconds, they're done because the train's leaving.
But also I think it's very universal. I mean, we've all let the one get away, and what our regrets, and that's the theme of the movie, you know? And so that moment is so satisfying because you think that that's what they're going to do, let each other go. But when they don't, it's like, I wish I would have done that too. And it's so satisfying because yes, they're doing it, and they're not going to make that mistake. And so that's why I think, because it's so universal, why it so pays off.
Yeah, I think, James, what you just said there, I mean, that's had to have been exactly what Linklater was thinking. I mean, he literally articulates that in the script. I mean, at one point, he actually says, Jesse? Yes, Jesse. He's not Celine. There's only two characters. Come on, Eric.
They should have put the names in the title.
but he says at the very beginning, consider yourself going back in time right now. Like, let's say you've ended up marrying, you ended up with someone, you guys are having problems. Consider yourself going back in time right now, and you have a chance to see whether or not you would have been happier with me.
Right.
And that sort of is tapping into, I think, kind of exactly what you're saying there, James. And I'm sorry if I'm putting words in your mouth, but that it felt like that was probably I don't see how you could ever write this script if you hadn't felt that way before.
Oh God! Oh my God! It just hit so deep with me. Like, oh my God, that was my life, you know. Mm-hmm. But I think so many people, you know. I don't think it's just. I think all of us have a certain aspect of that. So that's why it works so well. And the movie's so beloved by so many people.
This actually did happen to Linklater.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, he was. He's told the story a little bit, but he's definitely avoided a lot of the details. But he met a girl. I think he was doing some sort of press for Dazed and Confused. He was in some city. Met a girl, talked to her all night, and then tried to keep in contact. He never saw her in person again. They kind of sent a couple letters and then kind of faded away.
Well, that's commented on in the movie as well. So,
so it's really curious. 'Cause, I mean, it's the beauty. Like, the more we keep looking at Linklater's films, there is a wonderful passion he has just for people.
Yeah,
and that to me is why I find myself just rewatching his films over and over again. Like, I didn't even realize that I loved Linklater until I realized I love all of his films.
He loves his characters. He really does.
Yeah, this is what I was saying, because this is refreshing to talk about, because in the way we sort of ordered these podcasts, we're recording this after the one that's coming before it, so or we recorded before the one that's going to come after, or something like that, whatever. But we had just gone through a couple films that Austin didn't like. Like, it was weird. I like Clockwork Orange. Austin doesn't like it. Then we did Slacker. I don't like Slacker. He likes it. So it's like, okay, this is weird because we're butting heads in this podcast, and it's so refreshing to actually talk about a movie we both love. Yeah. But from Linklater's perspective, seeing Slacker, which is obviously a love of style and a love of conversation and a love of dialogue, and then with Dazed and Confused, he adds on characterization, which he doesn't. He has a little bit of it in the vignettes you see in Slacker, but it's more so. And then with For Sunrise, he sort of narrows it and adds plot like he hadn't had before. Not that there's much of a plot really here other than
Right.
what we've talked about, but it feels more rounded, I guess. Like I almost feel like his evolution seems quite clear to this point. So
Right.
anyway, I like it a lot.
Well, I'd love to use the last handful of minutes we have here in the episode to talk to you two about your film,
Okay.
Hank and Asha, which I love a lot. And kind of in relation to some things we brought up in this movie, we talked so much about the honesty and the naturalistic elements of Jesse and Celine. How did you guys, as screenwriters, kind of create that for Hank and Asha?
Well, one of the big differences between our film Hank and Asha and Before Sunrise is that the two characters in our film are, rather than meeting, this sort of chance encounter on a train, they're actually on opposite sides of the planet. One of them is in New York and one of them is in Prague. And so the real challenge in our film was, how do you create chemistry between two characters who actually aren't in the same place at the same time? And so for us, it was like some of these same dynamics that are in Before Sunrise, having to do with like you're longing to make a connection and sort of how you're presenting yourself, and the big dynamic in our film ended up becoming about this sort of sense of anticipation, right? So like you go out on a limb, like there are some bold moves that the characters in our film make, just like Jesse inviting her to get off the train. But then rather than in real time, Celine says, okay, maybe yes.
Yeah.
In our film, there's then a delay. You then have to sort of wait to hear the response.
Right.
And so, like, there's a certain amount of anticipation that heightens chemistry to it.
And also the same thing about being honest with someone you don't know. They don't have expectations. She sends Hank this letter with no expectations at all. And it just develops, and they're not expecting anything to happen. And so they therefore feel like they can be honest with each other. And I think it just goes from there.
And there's a wonderful use of honesty in your film, because like when I write a letter to somebody, I rewrite it 1,000 times before it's sent, which is a form of honesty. But with Hank and Asha, it always seems like it is their first take that they're sending.
Right.
Because people interrupt them, they stumble a little bit.
Yeah.
So they are actively trying to be honest with each other to make it be more meaningful.
Right. Well, we had the ideas of what the letters consisted of, and then working with the actors to kind of fill in the blanks. So basically it was a first take. I mean, we'd give them the scenario and they would create a letter, and then we'd do that letter maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different time or different ways. And so each take was a little bit different. And just because we wanted it to be like them writing a letter and then maybe rewriting it the second take or doing whatever. So it does kind of have that feel. But oftentimes we did use the first take anyway, because it seemed the most fresh. And also, we wanted it to feel awkward, which it is, and not polished. And they're actors, and we didn't want them to seem like actors performing in front of a camera. We wanted them to seem like real people stumbling and, that kind of thing.
Which does make one so curious about how they filmed Before Sunrise.
I know if it was improv. We don't know. I mean, you probably know if you saw the behind the scenes. But
So I'll be vague about what scene it is, but I know for a scene in Before Midnight, there is a really long scene that's one take, and there is not a single improvised word in it. They did that take like 15 times verbatim every time.
interesting.
I think the whole trilogy is actually really super scripted.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting to note.
So, with Hank and Asha, I have to ask: did you do one character all of it, or did you kind of go back and forth? I know it's filmed in New York and Prague.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And so we were in Prague at the time, and we shot all of Asha's stuff back all at once without Hank at all. And it's to her credit, she didn't have anything of his response to react to. So we kind of created that. I mean, just working with her, creating the response. Then I'd give her kind of a potential, several different responses that Hank could give to give her a reaction. And, she's such a great actress that she was using something inside of her, which I never asked her about because it wasn't my business, in terms of the relationship that she was visualizing. I told her to visualize something like that. And she created it. We got back to New York and shot all Hank stuff. And occasionally we'd show him one of the letters from Asha. But we didn't want to paint him into a corner because we didn't really know how we were going to edit the letters together. And so we didn't want, he could maybe respond in a certain way that locked us in. So probably, but we did show him maybe like a quarter of the letters, I'm guessing. Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, that's the magic of the movies.
Yeah.
We did not shoot it in sequence at all.
Not at all. And Julia's the editor, and kind of we worked on the story. Kind of changed a lot in the editing room based upon the juxtaposition of the letters too.
I would imagine it would have to, just because of the nature of which it's the story tells the story and the way you guys shot it. That's really interesting.
Right.
Now I'm curious about a whole experiment where in your free time just film this movie again. And get two different actors, and then just keep intercutting it with Hank with a different Asha and Asha with a different Hank.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah, just do it for my amusement. It'd be great.
Right.
But I think we got to wrap up now. Where can we find you guys? Where can we keep track of your future projects?
Our Facebook page for our film is Hank and Asha is Hank and Asha. And we also have a website, hankandasha.com.
And if you want to reach out, our emails our company's called Paper Chain Productions, so it's paperchainproductions@gmail.com. And we do get quite a number of comments of people who watch the film, which is really great. And we love corresponding with the audience because that is kind of, as a filmmaker, a unique chance because you so seldom get to interact with your audience. So we definitely encourage people to connect, and that's what our movie's about, is connection.
And the film is available for purchase, and also right now it's available on Amazon Prime.
It is, exactly. So go check it out.
It's a good one. And Eric, where can we find you every week?
Constant Diversion's my YouTube channel. The Last of Us video's finally done. I probably said that last week, but you can check that out on there as well.
Yeah,
so.
It's very good. 20 minutes long.
20 minutes long, yes.
And you can find the rest of the podcast at theartimmortal.com. You can leave a comment for this episode. Let us know what you think of Before Sunrise. You can also follow us at the Immortals Pod. You can email us at letstake5@theartimmortal.com. The other podcasts on the site, we have Ad Absurdum, we're the pop culture legal team. We're three lawyers talk about fake movies. And this month they talked about The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. And it turns out there are nuclear regulatory commissions for a reason. They explain it all. And also at the other show, The Immortals, where we review the 1001 movies, albums, food, songs, children's books, and TV shows that you must see before you die. Yesterday's episode, we reviewed On the Waterfront, Paul Simon, and the miniseries Jesus of Nazareth. So those are three random things.
Jeez.
I know. It's a crazy show. But once again, James and Julia, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
This has been so
It's
fun.
been so fun. It's such a pleasure to talk with you guys.
We could talk about this movie all night long.
All right.
Until sunrise.
We'll bring you back for the sequels.
Exactly.
All right. Goodbye, James, Julia. Goodbye, Eric. Goodbye.
All right. Bye-bye.
I'm Austin.
Thanks,
I'm
guys.
Eric.
Thanks, guys.
See y'all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, I have an admittedly insane idea, but if I don't ask you this, it's just, it's going to haunt me the rest of my life.
What?
I want to keep talking to you. I have no idea what your situation is, but I feel like we have some kind of connection, right?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, right. Well, great. So listen, here's the deal. This is what we should do. You should get off the train with me here in Vienna and come check out the town.
What?
Come on, it'll be fun. Come on.
What would we do?
I don't know. All I know is I have to catch an Austrian Airlines flight tomorrow morning at 9:30, and I don't really have enough money for a hotel, so I was just going to walk around, and it'd be a lot more fun if you came with me. And if I turn out to be some kind of psycho, you just get on the next train. All right. Think of it like this. Jump ahead 10, 20 years, okay? And you're married. And only your marriage doesn't have that same energy that it used to have. You start to blame your husband. You start to think about all those guys you've met in your life and what might have happened if you picked up with one of them, right? Well, I'm one of those guys. That's me. You know, so think of this as time travel from then to now. To find out what you're missing out on. See, what this really could be is a gigantic favor to both you and your future husband to find out that you're not missing out on anything. I'm just as big as loser as he is, totally unmotivated, totally boring, and you made the right choice and you're really happy.
Let me get my bag.